This is my championship-winning wheel-to-wheel racing Honda Civic, but it wasn't always like this. When I bought the car, it looked like every other Honda Civic that you rolled your eyes at. In this video, I'm going to take you through the 5-year journey of how I took my car from a normal, everyday Civic to winning championships and pole position leading car at a Touring Cup race at Laguna Seca. Well, this is it. I just bought this car. It's a 97 Civic DX that's made to look like a Type R. It does have a B16 engine in it, which is freaking awesome. Bought it for $2,800. Runs well, runs very healthy. I'm really stoked to clean it up and really make it a proper car instead of a stanced out car. The first step in making the car clean was to have it all one color. So we did a garage paint job on the car to make it championship white. I did this as cheaply as I could, and it actually turned out really good. This is it, the final product of the paint. I think it turned out quite amazing. And I finally got all the panels connected back onto it, and everything is like legit Type R. So I'm currently draining the coolant because I'm about to replace all of these silicone hoses because they're ugly, and also one of them is leaking. Gonna change the valve cover out with the legit Type R valve cover, not the Mugen one. I'm changing the timing belt and water pump, new clamps, spark plugs, fuel filter, thermostat, and a couple miscellaneous gaskets. At this point, we were ready to take the car on its first journey, the Key West, Florida to Nova Scotia road trip. The car was freshly painted and had all of the Civic Type R goodies on it.
This is as Honda as it gets.
Exactly, yeah. So hopefully it'll hold up to my, high school expectations of what a Honda should be. It has all of the Type R goodies on it. It has Recaros from the Type R in it, Type R steering wheel, cluster, shift knob, Type R wing, rear lip, side skirts, front bumper, and most importantly, the B16B from the Type R, as well as the transmission from the Type R that has an LSD. And yes, this car has VTEC. It just revs out to 8,500 RPM. I haven't gotten a lot of seat time with this car yet, but man, I really enjoy it. The Civic made it 7,000 miles all the way up and down the East Coast. I really fell in love with this car. It's such an amazing chassis. And when I got home, it definitely needed a wash and some more mods. I wanted to clean the car up. My goal was to make this a nice daily driver that I could take to the racetrack on the weekends. So I put on some nice wheels, cleaned up the engine bay, and really just cleaned up the car as a whole. I've also taken it to a bunch of racetracks, such as Gingerman Raceway in Michigan, Toronto Motorsports Park in Canada, and most recently where I took this to Virginia International Raceway and competed against my friend with his Integra Type R swapped Honda Civic as well. The B16B engine doesn't even make 200 horsepower, and you already know where the natural progression of things would lead a car enthusiast, to more power. So we pulled the B series out in favor of a K-swap. You're ready to pull the motor out. Let's go ahead and pull it out. I stripped the whole front end of the chassis down because I wanted to get the engine bay paint matched with championship white, but also because I needed to swap the subframe over with an Integra subframe to better fit the K-swap. Bare bones. I mean, there's nothing in here. I did leave the brake lines here because I didn't want to open up the system and let all of that air in and just make it be a big mess, especially when I can just pull it away. So I'm going to cover that, wrap that with some tape, and I should be good to go there. This was extremely time-consuming, but oh so satisfying.
This week we are going to be K-swapping EK Civic, and we're going to stuff a JDM K24 in it. We are going to open it up and do a few quick internal things. We're going to put a Type S oil pump. It's going to give a little more rev range. We're going to seal that up with a Moroso oil pan, baffled oil pan, because this car will see track time. And we're going to replace the head with a Z3 head, which is the 8th gen Civic Si head. While we're in there, we're going to put a 50-degree cam gear in, give a little more torque range, and drop in some cams. We're going to put an intake manifold RBC, right? RBC? Putting a slew of K-tuned parts on the car, some fuel setup, throttle body, a bunch of goodies. For electronics, for this car, we're going to be using the Honda K Pro ECU.
The car was running but not yet driving, so we had to hook up a bunch of other stuff like a working shifter and a full-size aluminum radiator to keep the car cool. All of this required fabrication, even the exhaust, which I opted for a 3-inch system instead of the typical 2.5, since I heard that the 3-inch can make a little bit more power and I was shooting for as much horsepower as possible, ideally around 270. Just a few more things to button up and we'd have the car on the dyno to find out. All right, well, as you can see, we're back here in my garage. The K-swap was successful. I've already been driving it around the street and it's amazing. I absolutely love this car. K is definitely the way. Now, there's still a bunch of stuff that we didn't do while we were up there in the shop. Andy was so efficient, so fast. I can't believe we got this done as quick as we did, but there was a lot of stuff that I didn't have ordered in time. With most builds, they kind of drag on infinitely, and hopefully this one isn't infinite, but there's still some major things that we need to do to this car before it is ready for the track. The biggest thing is going to be tires. So we're going to put on some wider wheels, 15 by 9s for the front and 15 by 8s for the back. I got a set of Koenig decograms. They're going to go on this car. They're a bronze finish. They look pretty good. I'm going to wrap that in some 245 front tires and 225 for the back. I'm going to go with the reverse stagger. Speaking of the rear of the car, it still has drum brakes on it at this point. I actually had picked up an Integra rear disc brake swap when I bought the car, and it's just been sitting around. So what better time to clean it up and put it on? On top, I've got the K-tuned camber arm, so that's to adjust the camber in the back. And then all the way up there, I've got a tow arm that's also K-tuned. So that's so I can help align the rear end of this car to make it match the front end. So everything back here is officially new, and I think it looks fantastic. It's going to perform fantastic, and I'm very excited to get this thing out on the road. Of course, if you're going to upgrade the rear brakes, you have to upgrade the front brakes as well to keep the bias correct. I went with some Porsche 986 calipers in the front with bigger rotors, as these were shown to be the best budget-friendly big brake setup for Hondas since they have the correct brake balance and they clear small little 15-inch wheels. The car was starting to get pretty fast now, so I wanted to make sure I was safe. So I put in a budget-friendly 4-point roll cage to make sure I was protected. This meant removing a lot of the interior pieces as well to make room for the cage, and by nature, also reducing the car's weight even further to offset some of the weight added with the cage. I'm trying to offset some of the weight from having this roll bar in the car, and that battery weighs 26 pounds. So a good way that I can lighten up this car a little bit is by going with an anti-gravity battery, which is what this is. This is a lithium battery, which is better than AGM, and I can't describe to you how light this is. That battery right there is 26 pounds. This battery is 3 pounds. It's incredible. Like, I've had dinner plates heavier than this. By now, the car is fully prepped for its first year of competitive racing. We were entering the car in Grid Life Time Attack Street Class, a class filled with 400 horsepower Evos and STIs. But I was excited because of all the prep work that we'd put into the car at this point. At its first weekend out, it actually performed pretty well. We finished 5th in class out of 18. Of course, it didn't happen without some complications. On the very last session, I dipped a tire off the track and it ripped my exhaust right off and wrapped around my control arm. So the next order of business was to get that fixed. After the first successful competition, all I wanted to do was improve the car further to see if we can get on a podium.
Today we're going to be installing an MXS 1.2 dash in Mia along with a couple of sensors and a custom harness.
Deutsch AS612 connectors, 37 pin for the main, 22 pin for the auxiliary harness, and we did a full mil-spec concentric twisted harness.
So with the Mia, we're adding on a couple of different sensors with room to grow. We've sourced something from KA Manufacturing. KA Sensors, they do automotive specialized sensors as well as we do. They have a 2-in-1 oil pressure and temperature sensor in one. The other sensors we've added in are tire temperature sensors today, and that's the core of everything suspension.
We got oil pressure, oil temperature. I have engine coolant as well on the right side. After another test event in Chicago, I had realized that my tires were holding me back. I just didn't have enough grip. So I decided to take the plunge and try to get big 17-inch wheels to fit so I could mount up wider tires. The car could just barely fit 255 width tires in the front. That was enough for me. Now we move on to more weight reduction. A common theme with this build, since the class I was competing in had no minimum weight requirement. I managed to get the car down to a jaunty 2289. Then we were off to Colorado to compete at Pikes Peak International Raceway. The car struggled with its suspension setup all weekend, but we managed to push the car to its first ever podium. With little time between events, we weren't able to get new suspension in time, but we were able to get another big mod that helped with the performance of this car quite a lot.
Today we're going to put a clutch type LSD into Ben's EK Civic.
With the increased traction given from the clutch type differential, we were off to Road America, but that event didn't quite go as planned. It's okay.
Yeah, you're cool.
Oh, well, it's gonna need new paint, huh? Unfortunately, the next event was only a couple of weeks away, so repairs had to be done as quickly as possible. We got it put back together off camera and made it to the final event of the season at Gingerman Raceway, where we could see how much faster we made the car since its first event of the season at the very same track. It looks a little worse for wear. I'm leaving it looking a little bit rough for the sake of time. To my amazement, the damage wasn't too bad. The car is all straight right now, and none of the suspension components actually got damaged. It was just mostly bodywork, so the fender, hood, front bumper, door. My goal for this event is to beat what I did at the last time we were here, which is a 141.7. Hopefully, with the larger tires and less weight in the car and the diff and everything, I should be able to go faster than that.
You went from 42.4 to 41.1 to 40.2. You got 2 seconds and 2 laps.
That's a front-wheel drive record.
Is it?
Yeah.
finally done it. I've broken into the 30s. I beat my previous time by almost 2 seconds and broke the front wheel drive record by 0.8 seconds. 4th place overall for the season, which is not bad, especially for your first season out of 80 drivers in the lineup, albeit not all 80 cars are competitive. Next year, I'm getting on the podium. Grid Life has introduced a new class this year called Club TR, and that class is allowed to run aero, which means I get to put a big splitter and a big spoiler on this car, and I'm super excited to do that because I've been wanting it all last year, so I'm really excited to finally be able to put some downforce on this car. So yeah, the look of this car is about to change a lot. Well, as you can see, this wing is clearly strong enough to support 155 pounds anyway. These are 5-inch tall side skirts to try to lower that gap, help, again, lower drag on this car.
We're going with the wood splitter. We generally recommend a 1/2 inch, but we're going with a 3/4 this time because it's a little bit more robust, it's a little stiffer, those times stay rigid, and that's what Ben's asking for, as well as the rules allow for about 3 inches from stick out of the bumper. That means 3 inches extension from any point in that bumper. That's a really simple type of splitter to use.
We took the car out to a test event and set the fastest lap time that I've ever turned at VIR. The car was really getting fast now. We had just a few more changes to get the car class legal before we started competition for the year. That's right, we are K-swapping my Civic again because I'm changing time attack classes. That allows aero now. I have to run a different engine setup. So we're gonna put this car in the dyno first, see how much I currently make, and then with the fully stock K24 that we're gonna put into it, we're gonna see how much that engine makes and compare the difference. Well, as it turns out, this car is not making as much power as it was making 14 months ago. It looks like we're only making 239 horsepower, which is like, what was that, 29 horsepower less than it made back in February 2020. So we took out the worn out K24 cammed engine in favor of a class legal, fully stock long block K24. We upgraded the oil pan with a better baffled Unit 2 Elite pan and threw the new engine in the car. Since this class doesn't have a power to weight limit, we wanted to squeeze as much power out of the stock block as possible. So we did about 80 pulls on the dyno, trying to figure out different intake setup configurations. We threw on a cutout and ported out SBS intake manifold and ran it over and over again until we made the final surprising number of 250 wheel horsepower. I think 250 is probably the most anybody, regardless of engine or platform, in this class, 250 is probably the most you can do.
Yeah, no, it should be a solid engine. I think it'll run all season, no issues. So
Yeah.
hopefully.
Just gotta work on the suspension next.
Yep.
Never ends. Because this new class allows two-way adjustable coilovers, we're allowed to adjust compression and rebound separately. I'm just here for testing, to kind of test out the new suspension stuff that I've got, get the damping and compression and all that stuff dialed in. Today's the day where we kind of all put it together and make it work. I'd rather do that on a test day like today, where I can get everything dialed in and feeling good, and I don't have to worry about it when we actually get to a competitive track day. So that's the goal here today. Let's just have some fun. Last year the car did a 39.8, and this year it's in the low 39s already right off the bat, at least a full second faster than we were last year. So we're in a good place for the start of the season. By the first event of the season, I had done a few more upgrades off camera. I put on a bigger carbon fiber Zebulon rear wing, and the party favorite, a headlight intake duct. We were ready for competition.
And out front, Ben Thorne. Good job, buddy. Ben from Gears and Gasoline YouTube channel.
I had finally won my first event with the car, and I was ready to do it again at the very next event at Autobahn Country Club.
And out front, his second win, 34.779. Mr. Ben Thorne in the white wide body car. I love it, baby. Got it real done today.
If you don't continue to develop your car in a competitive class, you'll fall behind. A weak point that I had with the car at this point was the brakes. I was overheating the relatively small rotors given how much grip the tires were producing. So, it's time to say goodbye to these amazing Porsche brakes and go with something better. I put on StopTech C43 competition nickel-plated calipers with a much bigger and, more importantly, thicker rotor to help with heat dissipation. I then took the car to Illusions Wraps to give it a more professional look. Huge thanks to Valvoline for sticking their neck out there to title sponsor the car. I think it's a great look.
All right, Club TR in P2, Mr. Ben Thorne with the Valvoline livery.
I've done a ton of stuff to this Civic since the last event. Most notably, you might notice these fender vents. That's gonna help give it a little bit more front downforce. I've also got an intake box, which should, in theory, give me a little bit more horsepower. And the biggest mod is Unseen, which is a brake booster delete. That should help some of my braking modulation and should help prevent some of that brake lockup that I had at the last event. Pretty happy taking home a P2 for the event, which in the overall point standings puts me in first place for the championship. So we are the Club TR 2021 season champions, and I couldn't be any happier.
Currently the Civic, I think, is actually pretty competitive where it's at. With anything, competition gets more fierce and everyone keeps taking it further and further. So if you just sit back and let the competition catch up, I mean, you're gonna start falling behind. Everything progresses, everyone pushes harder, and that's what we're about to do to the Civic, is push a little further and try to keep it at the pointy end of the stick.
All right, well, that just about wraps it up here at Andy's shop for now. The car is totally stripped out and ready for a roll cage. So now we're gonna load up this empty shell onto our trailer and go up to Minnesota. We're gonna have Artsum weld up the cage.
All right, so we got an 8-point cage here. 8-point means we have 8 points of attachment to the chassis.
The cage is going to be TIG welded. I will MIG weld plates to the chassis just because of the material and how thin it is. And then to those plates, all the tubing gets TIG welded between each other and to the mounting plates.
We have anti-intrusion bars, or foot bars sometimes what people call them. With the door bar design, Ben really wanted his window cranks to work. So they are a little on the higher side, but that's to clear the window cranks, and that is safer. Door bars are really tight, basically touching the door here. As much space as we can without removing the glass at this point.
We're gonna get everything in here painted, and it's gonna look nice and fresh when it's done, and it won't rust because this is just bare metal and it will rust. So the cage has to be painted at the very least, and if we're gonna paint the cage, we might as well paint everything else in here. Painting the interior took way longer than I'd like to admit, and while I have the engine out, I also went ahead and cleaned out and repainted the engine bay to keep it fresh.
I think we're gonna flock the dash. Ben wants some suede in his life. I tried to persuade him out of it, but it didn't work.
With the interior all complete, we then moved on to the mechanical upgrades that we made this off-season, which included a complete engine remachining refresh and upgrading the transmission gearing.
So these are Gear X gears that we have here. They're rated to 500 torque or something like that, which is good. Closer ratio gear set here, and it's gonna be a whole lot better for Ben on the track.
We also changed out my differential. We upgraded it with a stronger OS Geiken multi-clutch plate differential. After getting the car back together, we tuned it on the dyno and made right around 230 real horsepower. A lower number likely due to Andy having recalibrated his dyno since the last time.
These are some new Titan 7 R8 wheels, which are the same design as my old setup. These are a 10-inch wheel, while as my old ones were a 9-inch wheel, which is already pretty ridiculous, but with a 255 tire, I should actually have more contact patch on a 10-inch than I will on a 9-inch.
We then took the car to Valvoline's headquarters in Kentucky, where they custom blended a thinner weight oil so that my engine would have less parasitic loss through oil viscosity. The car was now ready for its next year of competition. Unfortunately, at the very first event of the year, my transmission axle seals started leaking. This oiled down the underside of the car and my rear tires, leaving me with a drift car for the weekend. This meant that I was not able to put down a fast enough time to make the podium. But we fixed it later and made a big upgrade to the car with some new Fortunato Dreadnought Pro 2-way adjustable coilovers, bringing out all of the stops to the next event at New Jersey Motorsports Park.
So we are 2 thousandths of a second off pace. We're still in second, but by 2 thousandths.
It was a hard-fought battle for first place. I did everything that I could to get the time, including removing the drag from my rear bumper. Grant Davidson and Sintegra were just barely out of reach, so I finished the event in second place. The same thing happened at the next event at Mid-Ohio. We were within a 1/10 of a second from each other.
Between Ben and I, we have 0.116 seconds, something like that, so just over a 10. So it's really tight.
The car is feeling super loose, which is good and bad. I can rotate the car, which is good. I can get through the corners, but it's bad because I'm scrubbing a lot of speed doing that. And I had a couple Tokyo drift moments there.
Peter Granberg has run with us for a couple of years. Whoa! Ben Thorne, big slide over the crest of 9. Gathers it up. He was going for it there, Greg. He's still cooking. He's still on a flyer here this lap, too. We'll follow him around back to the start finish. Oh, again, big slide. Can he hang on to it this time? He does.
Unfortunately, I finished in second place to Grant Davidson once again. But the next event was Lime Rock Park, a track that really suits my car and my driving style. I was so excited to be able to go out to such an iconic track.
And Lime Rock, I think it's my favorite track. So far, anyway. I mean, there's still more tracks to explore, but I really, really like this track.
And P1, Ben Thorne with a 58.6.
I was saying all season it was gonna happen. Gears and gasoline.
We got 2 P1s? Yeah,
baby.
buddy, yeah! My trailing arm has finally decided to let go. Yeah, it is cracking right there. But when you throw on some really grippy, wider tires, it puts a lot more load onto the trailing arm, and all of that extra high G-force load pushing on the trailing arm actually cracks the structure of the trailing arm itself. So that's not the only weak point. There's actually a ton of weak points in this rear trailing arm. The next weak point is where the hub mounts to the trailing arm. The top bolt and the bottom bolt are known to crack as well. Thankfully, mine has not cracked yet, but we're gonna support it now so that it never cracks. Now it's time to move over to this side of the trailing arm where I clearly have a rubber bushing, and that's no good. Track cars, you want to have spherical so there's no deflection. Mostly in the rear, it's going to deflect a little bit under braking, so it's going to make the car a little loose. Okay, with our spherical joint in, that leaves one final thing to this trailing arm, and that is a brace that goes across the whole length of the arm. A lot more structurally sound, so it's less prone to bending. So we want this to be super strong. We're going wheel-to-wheel, door-to-door racing with this Civic this year. So now we're ready to throw on some modifications to this car to make it fit into its wheel-to-wheel class a little bit better. But there's something major that I've been putting off, something that I wasn't allowed to do in my previous class. But now that I'm going to GLTC, I'm allowed. I'm gonna tub the front end of this car to get it lower. The footprint on the front of this car is absolutely massive. It looks huge. It's wider and also taller because of all the splitter and everything, so we need to slim that up, which might help reduce some drag. And in order to do that, we're gonna tub the front end, which means we're gonna cut out the wheel wells in the engine bay so that the wheels can come up. Right now, I can't make this car any lower than it currently is because the wheels actually contact the wheel wells in here. A trailer fender. And we're just gonna hack this up, fit the right size metal that fits into that wheel well, and then weld it in.
When you increase wheel clearance, you also have to increase the control arm clearance. So we had to cut out and weld in strut tower caps to clear the control arm's motion.
There's about 120 hours of labor put into tubbing the front end of this car.
We still had a lot of work to do to get the car homologated for its wheel-to-wheel class. So we decided to put the camera down in order to get it done in time for the season to start. This is the result.
This is my fully prepped GLTC spec Honda Civic now, and we're ready to go racing this weekend at Watkins Glen International. But I need to show you a few things that I did off camera to get this car ready for the new class, and a lot of that included safety equipment. Thankfully, a few companies wanted to sponsor us to make sure that we stay safe this year. One of those companies is RaceQuip, who sent out this full containment seat. If I get into a side impact, it'll protect my head, and I've also got this window net here to protect myself from any flying debris. We've also now got full fire suppression, so there's 3 nozzles in the engine bay and 2 nozzles in the cockpit. I've also put in these flat door panels to protect myself from any window glass in the case of a side impact. And maybe the coolest piece of all, the F1 FIA rain light. So now that we got all this extra safety, let's go to Watkins Glen. I have detuned the car to 203.8 horsepower. Previously it was around 230. So I've cut out almost 30 horsepower to be in this class. It's a power to weight class. So I will be going door to door with Corvettes and everything, making a lot more power, but they're heavier.
Ben Thorne is currently in 25th place, which he started out, I believe it was in 26, so he moved up a space.
This car is amazing. It is a very fast car. We've seen that over the last couple of years. It has won at so many time attack events. But now that we've gone to wheel, I'm not quite performing as well. At Watkins Glen, I finished in 25th position.
I had to improve the car to be competitive in this new wheel-to-wheel class. So I started with an inline carbon fiber Formula 1 intake that connects to my headlight hole to force the air in at higher speeds. We also needed to convert the car over to a 5-lug setup so I could run a wider tire in this class.
Spindle number 1 and spindle number 2. Look, they're both functional. We're 5-lug now.
We went from a 17 by 10 to an 18 by 10.5 and a 265 width tire. Lastly, we needed to upgrade the aero to further maximize the class rules. I actually put on a smaller rear wing, but swan neck and with a more aggressive profile. This allows me to run more power in the class while still maintaining the same level of rear downforce that I had before.
So we're gonna tune the Civic to make 206 wheel horsepower to meet the class rules.
Welcome back to Mid-Ohio and Lexington, Ohio. I'm Ben Thorne starting 15th, his best starting position in only his 2nd round. Being in the top 20 is a great place for him to start. It should be a lot of fun to watch him work his way forward.
This field is so freaking competitive. Wow.
The one on trackside, and we'll remind you again if you're in the
Green flag flies, and we're racing at Circuit Legends. Grid Life Touring Cup is underway. Got to play some defense now. Rosenberg big time sideways with Shukla behind him in the 410 S2000. There's Hans Warpedal, Ben Thorn in 12th and 13th place.
So close to top 10, dude. So close.
Top 10 car right here.
2 places away.
I think I broke the axle.
What?
I think I snapped an axle.
Are you kidding?
I'm not even kidding. Dude, I was in P11.
I know.
Oh!
OEM axles, which is quite a difficult feat because they don't make them anymore. I have some here, and we're gonna rebuild them, put new boots on it, obviously, put new grease in it, and put those little WD-40 straws in it.
The final few changes that we made were mostly weight reduction. We cut the car's weight down by roughly 80 pounds. We then threw in a much better positioned acuity shifter and some OEM Type R shift cables. I then cut down my front splitter into just an under tray to help utilize the class wheels further and help its aero balance.
I would say successful modifications, successful upgrades. I'm pretty sure the car's faster than it was before. If anything, I can drive it more consistently with that shifter now. So, it's off to Laguna Seca.
Alright everybody, I am here with Ben and Ben from Gears and Gasoline. How are you feeling about today?
Every event I've gone through, I've moved up in the ranks a little bit. So at Lime Rock, I was 12th, which I feel pretty good about, and I'm shooting for top 10 here.
That's Ben Thorn from Gears and Gasoline, again continuing his trek and forward progress in this series.
Nettegaard snuck around Thorn on that last lap, picks up that 5th spot.
It's Ben Thorn on the pole in the number 166 Advanced Auto Parts Honda Civic.
You're just sitting on the pole in a GLTC race at Laguna Seca. It's no big deal.
Thanks for that.
Green flag flies. Ben Thorn fires off down towards turn number 1. On the outside, it's Moore. Side by side into the first corner. Hilo, the Californian, right behind him into turn 1.
He's doing it. Go, Ben, run, 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 run. Oh my God, dude, yes, he's pulling a gap. This is literally best case scenario.
Baby boy is doing it.
Ben Thorn is leading a GLTC race in his first year of competition. I know that this was the expectation. I don't think he knew it would be reality here, Greg. Leading this race and driving away from Zach Moore in the 272. Oh, does he have a problem? He's slow. No, he's got a problem. Oh no, it's slipping away.
Unbelievable.
Larry Moore goes through. Here comes Rosenberg now.
Oh, you got to be kidding me.
My OEM shift cable had popped out and stuck the car in 5th gear. My first win slipped away on the final lap. But we know that we have a car that can win. This just means that we're gonna have to come back next year even stronger.